Much, Your Excellency. So shall we show by hands those of us who belong to the Ghana Federation of Labour? Thank you very much for joining us. Yeah, His Excellency continues to be your cheerleader, and he will continue to carry your mantle and ensure that the state deals fairly with you. Shall we also show by hand those who belong to the broad grouping of the forum? All right. So you are your own cheerleaders this time. But His Excellency the President is more than happy to join you. Thank you all for coming. As the program proceeds, we may introduce you individually so that we are all abreast of the level of representation that we have. So without taking any more of your time, I would welcome to the microphone the Honorable Alhaji Rashid Pelpo, who is Minister for Labour, Jobs and Employment. Honorable Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, Chief of Staff, colleagues, distinguished labor leaders, all comrades here. Good evening to you and welcome to this very critical, important meeting. We are aware that the President has made a promise that during the period of his time he will have constant dialogue with labor, the trapper. Various issues are brought up, many on salary disparities, others on structure, salary structure, and other issues, all of which are dependent on earlier policies which over the years have gotten distorted. Today's meeting is going to help us to appreciate where the President is coming from, where government is taking us to, how we can unite in our effort to develop this nation, working together as partners in development, not as opposition to each other. We, as already been mentioned, are social democrats. We align very much with labor. Labor is a friend to this party. And so we believe that in everything we do, we will open up very clearly to you. You will get to appreciate the fact You will get to appreciate the fact that we do not hide anything. We will open up the economy for you to understand. We will present to you the issues on the salaries and the structure within which we operate and the need for any policy intervention. The President, in his address, I believe, will touch on them and will be announcing possibly a new policy direction in addressing the challenges that for which we have been addressing because of dissatisfaction and because of distortions that have not clearly been put between us.
Eric Boachiadom is the Assemblyman for the Dahomey electoral area and member of the Kente Weavers Association and has more to say.
Since the 11th century, there are something selected weaver from Dahomey to travel to Bontuku to study the art form over there. So when the weavers returned, they were confined in the king's palace, weaving only for the king. So in the olden days, Kente was reserved for the king alone. If you are not a king or a royal, you will not be allowed to put on the cloth. Glory be to God. Today, if you have your money to afford, you can buy any cloth that you want to buy. So when the weavers returned, as I said earlier, they were in the king's palace. They came out with their own design, which gave birth to a cloth, which is known worldwide as Ashanti Kente. Ever since, this community has been a royal village weaving for the Parliament King of Ashanti, the Santehene. You've heard about Kente, Kente, Kente. What does it mean? Please, Kente is more than just a cloth. It is not a piece of fabric by which Ghanaians can be easily and distinctively identified in national conferences. It's no more a reserve for the king. So the question is, what is Kente? To the best of my knowledge, Kente is a visual representation of history, philosophy, ethics, and shared values, the powerful cultural symbol, and a source of pride, both for Ghanaians and African diaspora. So the craft chronicles the local history, which reflects the culture about the people. It portrays our culture. It's a medium of communication. For example, if you love somebody and you feel shy to the person that loves you, you can give him a type of design. When you see that particular design, it tells you that I love you. I have with me here the road to success. It's not a smooth way, but it's a rough road filled with obstacles, which can be surmounted only through constant toil. So to succeed in life, it's not a straight line. You have to struggle before you can succeed. This design portrays that. I have another one here. What's in your own time? That is, if you are richer than your fellow man, and they envy you. So if you want to tell people jealousy is not good, there's no need to open your mouth. You just take a cloth and then put it on. You are telling people jealousy is not good. The next question is, how do you get the names and the designs of the Kente cloth? Please, Kente designs and names are derived from philosophical concepts, oral literature, individual achievement, historical events, proverbs, human code of conduct, and some attributes of plant and animal life. That's how you get the names and also the designs.
History has it that the Ashanti Kente weaving started in 1697 when the then Asantehene selected weavers from 4 towns, including Adamumase, to Cote d'Ivoire to study the art of weaving. When they returned, they started weaving for the Asantehene. After some time, they created their own design and style, which has given birth to the Asante Kente known worldwide. Since then, Adamumase has been a royal weaving enclave for the Asantehene and home for the Mfutu Tumahene, the chief responsible for weaving traditional black and white Kente cloth for Asante royals. The chief is responsible,
including Iran, US, Israel, and the whole Gulf and Middle East. And so these are ongoing issues that we need to keep an eye on. But let me thank the Honorable Minister of Labor, Jobs and Employment and the Minister for Government Communications for organizing this dialogue. And I'm pleased to welcome all of you to the presidency, and I believe that we'll have a fruitful interaction. As part of our reset agenda and our quest for transparency in government, I pledged during the campaign to consult key stakeholders frequently in order to promote public trust in government and accountability. And so we held the first dialogue with the private sector, which we call the engine of growth, to see what the issues are and challenges that they face in terms of investing and expanding their businesses. Today's dialogue is with organized labor, because you need labor to be able to move the economy. And after this, as the Minister for Government Communications said, we will meet with the civil society organizations. That would include religious leaders, traditional leaders, and all of them. I just wish to set the preamble by saying that this government has nothing to hide. What you see is what you get. We've come a long way from the period where you had 2 different economic statistics. The statistics that we give you are the true state of the economy. And so today, we will show you what the size of the national cake is. You need to know what the size of the national cake is before we all decide how we share it. If we don't let you know what the size is, you believe it's bigger than it is, and your share is smaller. But if we let you know what the size is, then all of us know that the share we're getting is commensurate to what the cake is. And so the only way we can get a bigger share is to grow the cake bigger. And that's what this government is about. For the past year, we've been tightening expenditure, making sure we eschew waste so that we're able to grow the GDP in order that we can invest in infrastructure and grow the economy and thereby create more jobs. But until we all are on board and know that we must work together to grow the cake, create more employment, then we'll feel that somebody is enjoying more than the other. So I'll set the tone with my speech, but after that the Minister of Finance will also give you an indication of what the size of the national cake is. Not a traditional food. If it's king cake, what the size of the national king cake is, so that we all know how many balls we can share, and all of us will come to the table and share it. Nobody is going to sit and then after some people have eaten, then what is left over we give to organized labor and other disadvantaged groups. All of us are tightening our belts together. And so let me just go through inflict on you the prepared speech, but we'll have the opportunity to have an open forum, and so we'll be able to discuss, in depth what our national circumstances are. So I'm pleased to welcome you to this important dialogue, which lies at the core of our national development agenda, the welfare, dignity, and productivity of the Ghanaian worker. Let me start by sincerely thanking organized labor for the strength of our nation relies on the strength of the partnership between governments and organized labor. Today's meeting is therefore not just a dialogue, it's a collective responsibility to reset and reimagine the future of work, compensation, and social protection in Ghana. Leaders of organized labor. For many years, Ghana has faced ongoing disparities in public sector pay, repeated labor disputes, and a remuneration system that often struggles fairness to workers with the country's financial realities. These challenges have exerted significant pressure on public finances, and at times they have strained the social compact that exists between government and organized labor. It is therefore my firm conviction that the time has come not for just incremental adjustments, but for bold structural reforms in how public sector emoluments are determined and managed. Accordingly, as part of our reset agenda, the government has declared 2026 as the year of transition from the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission to a new independent emoluments commission. This reform is not about dismantling the progress we have achieved. On the contrary, the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission will serve as the institutional core to bring about this transformation. We'll reinforce and reposition the Commission both financially and in terms of human resources so that it becomes the technical cornerstone of a modern independent national authority capable of managing public sector pay with professionalism, independence, and credibility. The Independent Emoluments Commission will create a transparent, rule-based, and evidence-driven system for setting public sector pay. Under this framework, salaries and benefits will be guided by productivity, labor market realities, fiscal sustainability, strategic national priorities. And through this reform, government aims to, 1, address long-standing inequities within the public sector, rationalize allowances and benefits, strengthen the link between pay and productivity. Our goal is to move away from the fragmented and ad hoc wage decisions towards a system that is fair to workers, is responsible to the taxpayers, and is sustainable for future generations. Let me emphasize that this reform will be implemented in a phased manner and will be carried out in full consultation with organized labor every step of the way. As a first step, the new legislative framework will cover public sector institutions, agencies, and state-owned enterprises with a differentiated approach that reflects each entity's financial capacity and operational reality. It is also important to clarify.
after having spent some years in the...
To one office holders will be undertaken only after the required constitutional amendments and legislative processes have been carried out and are complete. At that stage, the Commission would be elevated into a fully fledged constitutional authority that will be responsible for determining the emoluments of all public officers holders, from the President to the least paid watchman. Sorry, we don't have watchmen anymore. Security officers. Distinguished leaders of labor, as we undertake this transition, the government must act with prudence and responsibility. For this reason, 2026 will not be a year for full renegotiation of conditions of service across the public sector. Instead, the government will carry out targeted, modest adjustments to specific allowances as an interim measure. This approach is necessary to maintain macroeconomic stability, manage expectations responsibly, and create the space needed to build a credible and sustainable national emoluments framework. Let me be clear, this is not a withdrawal from engagement with labor. It is a strategic pause to address the structural foundations of our compensation system in the interest of everybody. In preparation for the new framework, the Independent Emoluments Commission will develop a comprehensive national emoluments policy. The policy will address 1. Pay disparities, harmonize allowances, strengthen performance-based compensation, align public sector pay with Ghana's law.
The municipality. So promotion won't be a difficult thing.
The chief of Adamumase, Nana Kwejo Ntiamwa Penny, who was installed after the death of the late chief, Nana Ofosu Entry Buesiakon, thanked the people for coming to support him to make the festival a success. He urged them to always attend in their numbers to move it to greater heights. He also called for people to develop the town. There was an all-round exhibition to showcase new Kente designs to the gathering. Some of the exhibitors who spoke with GBC News said they are happy that the festival has been instituted to enable them to showcase their designs to the world. They said they have designs to suit every occasion.
This year, there are more variety of Kente clothes that have come out. The very old weaves have come out under the trunks. And you can see that there's a lot of color in the whole session.
Factory no awaddamasna and common no more no more who ye. Yes, so Kente or Hanama, Utumsadamasi, a boy homoden pa. They say this time I for crowd who did continue a year. And it's all boy no improve and now a Kente Jumadiana Cosla. I hope say we are see a man now be able to yanka. I'm a young Kente, dear Kente so fast.
We can't say from me, your friend no, you come mine. You come mine. And to my metoy and a chapa papa, bro, 10 years in it. Yes, in the tia. And into money, ya time, Mommy Anka say, Nina, your pet, containing your pet. Difference womb, papa womb. It is a ton aboard there. Your man hires a ton to mano aboard ding. Because I would see can now ton to man aboard there. A big wama, wow, one on my befra, one on council, so baba befra, just a ja. And Sana and Tamano at me at a
Kente from your friend better at 50. My 50th birthday. And our my yadi so be a Kente papa. Or perso chro bibi dini birthday. Or perso chro bibi bibia. You bet me a design color bia or pedia he answer would do color ope. Say your birthday. Anniversary bia or person within. Or the bad and woman see. Ubenya Kente papa. The whole world at a woman see Kente number 1. Ope Kenta brother woman see.
The Kente Festival is celebrated in September every year. This year it was on the theme, the Year of Return, exploiting our creativity for unity and development.
In 1965, Ghana chose her own value. From cowries and pounds, the city was born. Our pride in our own hands. It flowed through markets, palms, and memories, and became part of daily life. Through every season of change, the city has remained a constant in Ghanaian life. In 2007, we took a bold step, ushering in...
It's not just a slogan, it is a commitment. A commitment to fix what is broken. A commitment to build what is sustainable. And a commitment to ensure that every Ghanaian worker is treated with fairness and dignity. And so I welcome you to this dialogue. I thank you for your attention, and I look forward to a very fruitful and vibrant discussion. May God bless our homeland, Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for those thought-provoking words. At this stage, I would invite the Honorable Dr. Kasiel Atufosin, Minister for Finance, to make a presentation on the state of the economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I will be making a presentation on the public sector compensation issues in Ghana. First, let me say that government, in line with Article 24(1) of the 1992 Constitution, recognized the right of fair remuneration and equal pay for workers of equal value. However, labor-related fiscal pressures remain one of the most significant structural challenges confronting Ghana's public sector finances. The expansion of the public sector workforce, combined with periodic reviews in pay for public institutions, are key drivers of increases in the compensation budget. It has the propensity to derail Ghana's economic progress. Mr. President, compensation of Ghana's employees is currently the largest share of government expenditure. Of the total government expenditure, employees' compensation account for 39%, debt service account for 32%, and grant to other government units account for 29%. The crowding effect of compensation means that whilst we spend 33% of our compensation budget, our expenditure on compensation, only 3% is used for goods and service, only 3%. Capital expenditure represents only 6% of Ghana's expenditure. Social benefits only represent 1% of government expenditure, and grants to other government units representing the statutory funds is about 24%, whilst debt service represents 26% of our total expenditure. So clearly, it is obvious that we are paying a lot, we are spending a lot of our budget on compensation, but very little is going to the ministries, departments, and agencies for the purposes of running the agencies. Your Excellency, some key facts on the compensation issues in Ghana are that at the end of 2025 fiscal year, compensation budget accounted for 44% of non-oil tax revenue, 5.64% of GDP, and 33.78% of total expenditure. I repeat, our compensation accounts for 44% of the total non-oil tax revenue, 5.64% of GDP, and 33.78% of total expenditure. Ghana's compensation to tax revenue ratio of 44% for 2025 is higher and way above the ECOWAS threshold of 35%. The ECOWAS convergence criteria requires that compensation should not exceed 35%, but in the case of Ghana, it is 44%. In 2025, non-oil tax revenue was 183 billion Ghana cedis. Statutory funds, including District Assembly's Common Fund, Ghana Education Trust Fund, and National Health Insurance Levy, was about 55.7 billion Ghana cedis. Debt servicing, this is what we use to service our debt, amounted to 64.3 billion. This means that of the 183 billion Ghana cedis non-oil tax revenue that we collected, only 61.9 billion Ghana cedis is available for the purposes of compensation, goods and service, and capital expenditure. The 2025 compensation bill was 78.9 billion Ghana cedis. Simply put, the 78.9 billion cedis, in fact, if you are to deduct all the statutory funds and debt service, what was left was 61.9 billion. So the 78.9 billion is far more than what was left. This simply means that after paying for statutory funds and debt service from non-oil tax revenue of 183 billion Ghana cedis, what was left was not enough to settle Ghana's compensation bill. This also means that government of Ghana had to borrow 17 billion Ghana cedis to pay Ghanaian workers. Simple put, we borrow to augment what is left to pay for Ghanaian workers. Your Excellency, the drivers of the rising wage bill and the compensation costs are as follows. We have the annual base pay adjustment, growth in employment levels in the public sector, request for introduction of new incremental adjustment in existing conditions of service. Example is institution-specific allowances that we've seen that it is coming up. Legislative and administrative approvals leads to enhancement in pay and pension obligation arising from improved condition of service. These days, almost every institution is taking a bill to Parliament for approval to get a new pay structure. Your Excellency, under the legislative framework guiding the pay structure in Ghana, there are various legislative instruments that contain enhanced conditions of service for some public institutions. Some of these laws are in contravention of the provisions in the 1992 Constitution. There are also enabling acts that empower boards of public institutions to determine the conditions of service of staff without recourse to the Minister for Finance. This is also a contravention of the Public Financial Management Act, Act 921. Undoubtedly, the various enactments and their implications on conditions of service of staff within the public service create chaos and inequalities in pay and its administration. These laws are inconsistent with each other, and most especially with the 1992 Constitution and the Act establishing the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission. The current conditions of service review framework is such that the conditions of service of public sector institutions are determined through several fragmented channels, including Public Sector Joint Standing Negotiation Committee that determines the annual base pay negotiations, the Labor Unions Association negotiations, allowance for public institutions, requests from independent constitutional bodies and other agencies, i.e. Parliament, Judicial Service, Audit Service, and the Ghana Armed Forces. Public Emolument, Presidential Emolument Committee that determines Article 71, and Enabling Act and administrative approvals that we've seen in the past. Excellency, in the year 2024 alone, the conditions of service review added to, in the year 2024 alone, the conditions of service review added 2.4 billion Ghana cedis to our wage bill. And then you will notice that the Ministry of Education is the one that led the chart with about 1.3 billion Ghana cedis of the 2.4 billion. In the year 2025, we saw that the conditions of service review alone added 6 billion Ghana cedis to the wage bill. Of this, the Ministry of Interior alone contributed 5.7 billion. And these decisions were taken prior to the elections, when huge amount of people were employed under the agencies of Ministry of Interior. Your Excellency, in the year 2026, so far, we have received from the Fair Wages and Salaries proposals of conditions of service amounting to 7.4 billion Ghana cedis, which we are reviewing. The 2026 agreement between government and organized labor still holds. In fact, per the 9th November 2025 agreement on the 2026 base pay, government committed to engage with unions on outstanding conditions of service and undertake critical recruitment into the public service, all within budget constraints. In this regard, government has commenced processes for the recruitment of staff into the public service. Fair Wages and Salaries Commission has also commenced negotiations with organized labor on review of conditions of service, and very soon we'll be approving them. The reason why there's the need to take a closer look at Ghana's compensation are that the 2025 non-oil tax revenue of 183 billion Ghana cedis was only enough to pay for statutory transfers and debt service. After paying statutory funds such as District Assembly Common Fund, Get Fund, National Health Insurance, and debt service, what was left was not enough to settle Ghana's compensation bill. In fact, government of Ghana had to borrow 17 billion Ghana cedis to augment the compensation bill. Your Excellency, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Finance Minister, for your presentation. I would at this stage invite Mr. Smith Graham, CEO of the Fair Wages Commission, to make a presentation. Let's welcome him with a round of applause.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Honorable Chief of Staff, Honorable Ministers, and Presidential aides, comrades, good evening. Let me begin with a simple but honest truth. The current public sector pay system is not working for workers and it's not working for the nation. We have a system where people are doing similar work and are paid differently, where allowances have overtaken salaries, and where every few months we are drawn into disputes, not because workers are unreasonable, but because the system itself is also fragmented, opaque, and increasingly unsustainable. Today, thankfully, we are not here to negotiate, but to look at how we'll be able to help improve the system. Your Excellency, all the strikes that we encounter in this country come with a huge cost. In 2024 alone, we had 22 strikes. The 22 strikes we had cost the nation 1.47 billion Ghana cedis. The 22 strikes. In 2025, we had 8 strikes, and the 8 strikes cost the nation about 635 million Ghana cedis. This year, we've had some strikes, and they all come at a huge cost to us as a state. The single spine pay policy was introduced, Your Excellency, to attempt to correct the major distortions in the salary structures in the public service. This was achieved to a very large extent, and we are supposed to continue improving on it until we get it right. Unfortunately, with the passage of time, we are almost back to square one. Legitimate concerns are still being raised regarding disparities in public sector pay, distortions created by multiple allowances, inequities between institutions performing similar functions, challenges of managing the low and high levels on the single spine salary structure, among others. These concerns are real, and they have contributed to recurring labor agitations across the public sector. From the technical perspective of the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, it is clear that the current architecture for managing public sector pay has reached its structural limit. What is required now is not simply another round of negotiations, but a structural reform of how remuneration itself is determined. And we are happy was referred to Fair Wages and Salaries Commission. But for some time now, we realized that arrangement was also stopped. And so institutions were going to Parliament, getting bills passed, and in the bills are the determination of conditions of service. And so it resulted in huge and different salary structures now within the public sector, completely destroying the single spine salary structure that we started. Your Excellency, as I indicated, we are grateful to you for declaring the 2026 as a year of transition. And together with my board and together with Organized Labor, we'll work out the plan to initiate the various consultative processes to ensure that we are able to improve on the system and help the Independent Emolument Commission come to fruition. I must say that we are very ready, and as a commission we will do our best in consultation with them. The challenges are real, and the labor unions will bear with me. We've had lengthy discussions, and they've all contributed to the current system that we have, the current system that is broken, because we allowed certain decisions to be taken outside the framework of the single spine pay policy. And this is what has brought us this far. It is my prayer that together with you, we'll be able to work through the Independent Emolument Commission and rectify this situation once and for all. Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much, Mr. Graham. At this stage, we would delve straight into an open forum and discussion segment. Your Excellency, your comrades in the labor unions are not called organized labor for nothing. They are so well organized that they have elected that their leaders represent them in the open forum and discussions. So they have organized themselves under 3 umbrella groupings and have nominated 2 of their leaders each to engage you in discussions, comments, and any questions they may have of government policy and your intentions towards them. In that regard, I would call Brother Joshua Ansah to set the ball rolling on behalf of the Trades Union Congress. So, Brother Ansah, the floor is yours. If I believe you can activate, please activate the microphone and let us have your contribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Your Excellency, Honorable Chief of Staff, Honorable Finance Minister, Honorable Labor Minister, and colleagues and comrades, you rightly said it. Organized labor is well organized, and we have consolidated all our issues and have been mandated to speak on our behalf. But before I speak, the issue about larger percentage going to compensation. We have asked this question from day one up to today. Not this government, but government upon government. What constitutes that portion of the emoluments or the compensations that we tout ourselves with? We would like to know one day that, yes, we are spending 39%, we are spending 40%. 20% of that goes to maybe a few people, whilst the majority share the 10%. Your Excellency, Organized Labour values the opportunity to dialogue over public sector salary, pensions and other important issues relating to the workings of the Ghanaian labour market. And Honourable Minister, I want you to actually bear with us, because when I speak, don't worry about the time, because I'm speaking for all. Your Excellency, our issues are many, and I plead that you bear with me as I take you through a few of them. And let me begin with the obvious issue about earnings in Ghana. Your Excellency, you are no stranger to the earnings situation in Ghana. The minimum wage is now only 21 cedis, 78 pesos per day, or 588 Ghana cedis for 8 solid hours of work. This amount is barely insufficient. It's barely sufficient for a worker who takes Hausa cocoa for breakfast, gobe for lunch, and another cocoa for dinner. We can only conclude that minimum wage earnings in Ghana, who pay rent, utilities, and clothing, are magicians. Your Excellency, pay on the single span salary structure, which your government implemented in 2010, is not any better. In 2026, the minimum pay on the single span is $809 per month. This translates into only $75 per month. Your Excellency, how workers on this salary pay for food, rent, clothing, and utilities for themselves and their families remains a puzzle. Your Excellency, with this low pay and the prevailing cost of living, it is difficult to discuss productivity in the country, Your Excellency. According to the World Bank, Your Excellency, there is evidence across the world that government workers cut back their productivity or hours of work when salaries are low. The bank says low salaries result in absenteeism, alternative employment, rent seeking, the per diem problem, certain allowance, and low productivity. The proverbial chicken and situation no longer apply. In truth, the chicken is too famished to produce the egg. We must rehabilitate the chicken. Your Excellency, the other issue about wages in Ghana is high levels of pay inequities, particularly in the public sector. In the state-owned organizations, some chief executives are being paid basic monthly wage of 100,000 Ghana cedis, with monthly rent allowance of about $4,000. Your Excellency, the single span pay policy has in many ways been mismanaged by government itself. A key principle underlying the single span pay policy was the consolidation of allowances, because allowances have been deemed non-transparent and a major source of inequity in pay administration. Therefore, allowances were consolidated to ensure fairness. Today, the allowances are back. Government have granted allowances indiscriminately to some groups while denying same to other workers. So far, about 80% of workers on the single span have some form of allowances. The remaining 20% have nothing. They subsist merely on their base pay. We must correct these discrepancies. Indeed, Mr. President, as part of the 2026 base pay negotiations, government promised to address all remaining conditions of service challenges facing our workers after the negotiations, Fair Wages and Salaries Commission and the Ministry of Finance are dragging their feet, and our members have become agitated. But I'm glad to hear from the Finance Minister that they have started working on it, and we have been promised that that 1% which was reserved for this arrangement will immediately be effected after this meeting. Your Excellency, we appeal to you to order the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission and the Ministry of Finance to conclude these conditions of service negotiations quickly to avert any industrial disturbances. Mr. President, we must address these discrepancies before launching another salary reforms. Your Excellency, we welcome the initiative to establish the Independent Emolument Commission. While the Commission can help address the pay inequalities in the public sector, it may not in itself address the old age problem of low pay. Organized labor will accept full-scale interpretation of the Independent Emolument Commission rather than piecemeal implementation. Your Excellency, we need to adopt a proactive incomes policy as a foundation for the work of the Emolument Commission on incomes, policy that addresses the basic needs of workers and their families. That policy must be a living wage. You must move away from the piecemeal approach in the awarding 9%, 5%, 2% every year to a situation where a living wage discussions must begin and end with no time. Your Excellency, more than a decade and a half after the introduction of the pension reforms, we now have more and deeper concerns about the national pension system. Significant cohort of workers retiring under the 3-tier pension scheme continue to receive lower lump sum benefits compared with what they would have received if they had retired under the PNDC law 247 regime. Pension coverage remains low and it has been testified by His Excellency this evening at less than a fifth of the eligible population. Significant proportion of people on pension receive less than 500 Ghana cedis a month, which is less than $50. Inequities in pension have remained and even grown. Reflecting the pay inequities, we have just mentioned the least pensioner gets 400 Ghana cedis, whilst another pensioner gets 218,000 a month as pension. You can all see the discrepancies here, the inequity here. In the same pension system are the emerging privileged class of Ghanaians who do not have to contribute to their pension but have been guaranteed the best of pensions when they retire. I'm referring to the politicians, judges, senior military officers, policemen and women, and other public servants who retire on their salaries. We think that we must all contribute to something before you can have our share. To be fair. Mr. President, we need a reset here. And I want to repeat, we need a reset here. Pensions unification must happen under your leadership. Pension unification must happen under your leadership. Fairness demands that all workers with savings capacity contribute towards their pension. It will make a big relief to the already stretched government budget. Mr. President, Organized Labour have deeper concern over the basic pensions scheme managed by SNIT, and we are unhappy with the growing government control over the management of SNIT. We need to take a second look at the existing pension arrangement. We have heard from the grapevine that your government has moved pensions from the Ministry of Labour, Jobs and Employment to the Ministry of Finance. We have heard. Given our role in pension management, we are at a loss why we were not even consulted on this monumental decision. Your Excellency, Organized Labour seriously object to this switch, and we reiterate our position that pension is more about welfare of retired workers and less about finance. Your Excellency, you are no doubt aware of the acute employment challenges facing the country. Despite recent gains in macroeconomic management and consistent output growth for over 4 decades, good jobs have remained rare. The numbers that just apply for employment into the security services highlight the enormity of the employment challenge. Mr. President, the numbers indicate to us that the employment challenge is both colossal and difficult. Despite consistent GDP growth for more than 4 decades, many continue to struggle to obtain decent employment, one that is commensurate with their education and delivers fair income and benefits secure. Your Excellency, the high rate of unemployment and joblessness entails substantial waste of human resources of the country. Too many young people educated at greater cost to themselves and their families, but also to the nation, are denied the opportunity to realize their potential and contribute to nation burden. A key explanation for the employment time bomb we face is the way we have managed our economy in the last 4 decades over priorities. Macroeconomics, stability, and employment on as a residual outcome of economic growth. The economic policy framework must change if we are to have any chance of reversing the current levels of joblessness and giving hope to our youth. In the past 1 year, we have keenly observed debates about the economy and economic policy initiatives of your government. Mr. President, Organized Labour has its own views on economic policy and economics. We ask that government grants us the forum to dialogue over national economic policy, especially as Ghana exits the IMF program next month. Your Excellency, employment challenges also manifest in the weakness of national institutions for industrial relations and social dialogue. This has resulted in rampant abuse of workers' rights, especially the right to join or form a union. Workers who opt to exercise their constitutional right to form or join unions are often threatened with dismissals. In simple terms, government over the years have refused to enforce the simplest of the labor legislations they have enacted. Given that good jobs are hard to come by, failure to enforce the labor legislations have effectively numbed and turned the labor market into employers' market. Employers are dictating the pace and in terms of engagement, the macro policies once are seriously abusing workers' basic rights. Mr. President, employment agencies have turned themselves into employers instead of simply connecting workers with employers. While running payrolls, both the employment agencies and client companies continue to deny their employer status. This leaves workers frustrated as who their employer is. This situation cannot be allowed to continue, Mr. President. We must work together to complete the labor law review to give more and better protection to workers. The current law has deficiencies which employers are exploiting against workers. For example, employers terminating workers without giving any reason for the termination. The courts have upheld this practice. We are appealing to you, our President, to adopt a policy that will compel employers to give a worker a reason for terminating their employment. The policy can then be incorporated into the new labor law. Government must prioritize investment in social dialogue, and doing so will be far cheaper than managing strikes and industrial disturbances. In our 2025 May Day statement, we indicated the precarious situation of the energy and electricity sector. We acknowledge the multiplicity of challenges affecting the sector, including the high energy sector debts. Since then, we have seen a remarkable turnaround. The lights have been fairly stable in the past 1 year, even though increases in electricity bills have outpaced growth of our incomes. While we acknowledge that Mr. President, 2026 budget statement indicate that UCG's average monthly revenue collection increased from approximately 900 million Ghana cedis to around 1.75 billion, representing nearly 90% increase in revenue collection. Kudos to government and workers of UCG. While we acknowledge that the energy sector is not completely out of the woods, the remarkable turnaround is an enduring testimony that Ghanaians are capable of managing their affairs of their own. Organized labor, therefore, sees no value addition from the proposal to privatize ECG. Your government calls it private sector participation. Organized labor says privatization and private sector participation are the same and they have one mother. We have perused the technical notes from the government PSP team and this week, and its conceptualization is confusing in the problem it seeks to resolve. Your Excellency, the housing and sanitation situation remain dire for most Ghanaians. In fact, Ghanaians are generally poorly housed. Government interventions in the housing sector has failed to solve the problem. We need to work together to properly house Ghanaians. We can do this by adopting the social housing model. Organized labor fully supports your efforts to reform the 1992 Constitution. Our idea of constitutional reform is premised on giving power back to the people of Ghana and reducing the overbearing powers of the executive branch. Achieving true separation of powers and forging national to a reformed constitution must be inclusive and consensual. That is the only way we can reduce the current partisan warfare. We have heard about a report by the committee you set up following our statement on the revocation of appointments done by the previous government. We are still searching for the full report so that we can respond to the work of the committee. Beyond the revocation of appointments, the management of our public service sector institutions continue to deteriorate after every change of government. The partisan political maneuvers are ongoing and continue to weaken the institutions of state. The usual excuse that the other party of government did the same and inexcusably anymore because it places the country and its institutions on the road to the abyss. We must reset away from this path. First is the revocation of LI 2462, which had permitted mining in forest reserves. Organized Labour sincerely commend you and your government for this. We also acknowledge the ongoing efforts to deal with Galamsey. At the same time, we draw attention that Galamsey is still very much prevalent. This is the last flag, Mr. President. Mr. President, Mr. President, let me at this point officially invite you to our 2026 National May Day, which is slated for 1st May 2026 at Koforidua in the Eastern region. We are going to the Chief of Staff's home. So you are officially invited as the special guest of honor. Thank you. And with these few remarks, I want to thank all of you for your attention. Thank you.
Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever.
Well, I am highly impressed with your repertoire of I was going to say that I'm highly enthused by your repertoire of unscripted and impromptu performances. Keep them coming. So we have heard from Organized Labour through your appointed spokesperson, Brother Joshua Ansah, who I believe deserves a round of applause for ably articulating your concerns, your views and comments about your welfare and matters of national concern. I would now invite His Excellency the President to respond to these concerns and put across any other matters that he deems appropriate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. My comrade Joshua, thanks for the State of the Nation address. No, State of Labor address. But you've raised virtually the whole gamut of issues concerning labor. And I've said that we approach these with transparency and openness. First, we talk about the breakdown of compensation. And I think that's a very important issue. When we talk about compensations consuming a certain percentage of total earnings, we need to drill down to who is getting what. And that is why I believe that an independent emoluments commission will show what the salary of the president is and what the salary of the watchman is. And based on that, we can address the iniquities in the system. Right now, we have Article 71. We have fair wages and salaries. Then we have SOEs, whose compensation is determined by their boards, not even the finance minister. So scratch my back, I scratch your back. So they approve board allowances, and the board approves it, and the board also approves increased salary for the chief executive and everybody. There are chief executives who earn more money than the president. And so we need to bring some equity and uniformity into these allowances. So like you're saying, when it comes to compensation, we're talking about those on the consolidated fund. And so who earns the highest, who earns the lowest? We don't know, because we have different, intersections into the whole spine. I remember when we did the single spine, everybody, we grandfathered some people who were above others. Others we brought up. I remember the police were celebrating because they were at the front of all the security initiatives. They were being shot, killed, and all that, fighting armed robbers, and yet they were among the most poorly paid. When they saw their new salary structure, people wanted to go to the bank and say, no, this is not correct. I'm sure you've credited some money to my account that is not, and they say, oh no, that's your new salary scale. Today, those services are complaining again. Immigration is complaining, everybody is complaining, CLOSAG is going to strike. We just brought them back. So what I'm saying is, if we're responding to individual and everything, we probably will not get it right. But above all, the important thing is, how much can we set aside from the national cake for compensation? Once we know what it is, then let's share it so that everybody gets what he feels is his fair share. But for me, what I think is, it's not the fault of labor. It's the fault of leadership that we administer the economy grows. As the economy grows, everybody gets a bigger share of the cake. But when leadership mismanages the economy, labor doesn't mismanage the economy. It's not organized labor who are running the economy. Organized labor are not the Minister of Finance. They are not the governor of the bank. They are just working to earn a salary. And so it is our responsibility to make sure that we manage the economy in such a way that it keeps growing so that we can keep employing more of our children and giving a better wage to our workers. So for me, I believe that we have a role to play. And that is why I'm holding my government to account, that we must be fiscally prudent and responsible, that we're not wasting the resources of government. And so for every sector, we're looking at how we can optimize and make sure that every CD that the taxpayers' money is being spent on properly. And that is the mission of this government, and that's the mission of the reset agenda. We don't have two sets of economic statistics like some previous governments have. What you see is what you get. And read are the statistics of the state of the economy. And so once we do that, all of us can come and sit down and say, this is what is available. How do we manage it? I was president when the single spine was finalized. It started in Professor Mills' time, but it was finalized in my term. And we adjusted salaries. What actually caused the first shock that we never really recovered from, apart from the energy crisis, was the single spine salary structure, because in 2012, after we had finished the negotiation, in 2013, we started paying the arrears, and the arrears were huge. By the time we finished, we're paying almost 73% of total tax revenue for compensation alone. And so I'm saying that we need to begin to look at salaries and wages again in a manner that is uniform, that compensates everybody appropriately, but must do it in a way that we don't destroy the economy again. And so that is the discussion that I said Graham Smith and his people are going to lead, including the Minister of Finance, and we're going to involve you. We all are going to talk about it and see how we're going to do this together. But to look at other issues, and I think my brother raised a lot of issues. We've had the situation where regulations are being brought to Parliament. Parliament is passing them. and allowing all categories of people to retire on either their salaries or percentages of their salaries. And there's some iniquity when it comes to that. So when it comes to pension reform, we need to look at all those issues, because it's like we're bringing regulations to Parliament. And the regulations include many things, including welfare, uniforms. They must be provided with appropriate boots. But smuggled in there is that from this rank onwards, we shall retire on our salaries. And that is creating a disparity, so we need to look at that. Comrade Joshua, I'll say that in most jurisdictions, pensions are underfinanced. In most jurisdictions, if you like, do a research. In most jurisdictions, pensions come under finance. And so we can discuss the issue about Ministry of Employment. Like you said, the recent security services recruitment shows us the huge scope of the problems we face. We say that we have a young, vibrant youth population, which is an advantage, but at the same time, it's a powder keg. It is an explosive issue, because as long as we're not creating opportunities for this youthful population, then it can become a disadvantage. And so, if you look at the recent recruitment exercise, 500 and something thousand people applied for different services. But if you drill down and take away the double application, some people applied for immigration, applied for police, applied for fire service, each one. If you take all that out, then 290,000 young people applied for recruitment into the public service, into the security services. Meanwhile, the security services were taking 5,000 out of the 290,000. So it shows you what, like Comrade Joshua said, the extent of unemployment is amongst our young people. And so it's something that we must work on together and make sure that we expand the opportunities. And we cannot expand the opportunities in the public sector endlessly. The private sector is the area where we can absorb the maximum of people. But we can't do that without transforming our economy. We can't do that without growing agriculture. We can't do that without growing agro-processing and agribusiness. We can't continue spending $3 billion on food imports, which we could have saved and invested in the economy. So these are issues that, yes, the buck stops with me because I'm president, and I'll continue to work on the decisions to turn things around. But you can't turn things around in 1 year. In 1 year, we stabilized the economy. Our focus was to stabilize the economy because the economy was in decline, it was in crisis, so we needed to stabilize it. Now that we stabilized it, we must maintain stability, but now our focus must be on growth and job creation. Growing the private sector to make sure that we have the B5s, we have the KEDA at Shama Industrial Area that are opening factories and absorbing our young people. Anytime I go and I open a new industry and I see our young people in overalls working, it gives me pleasure. Recently, this calcine cement factory I went and opened, 190 young people have gotten jobs in the factory, and they were in their overalls. And I told them, I said, you are the lucky ones. For each job that you have, there are 10 young people who could have taken that job. So how do we expand the private sector to absorb the thousands of people, young people who are coming out of school? Government, public sector on its own, employs less than 1 million people. We are 33 million people in this country. So however you expand the public sector, you can't absorb all those people. So for us, how do we maintain the growth of this economy so that we're able to absorb the young people that are coming out? I think that that's important. Last year we held the National Economic Dialogue. This year we're going to hold another national economic dialogue because we want to look at the progress we've made from the last one. The last one identified what the issues we had inherited were and what steps we should take to arrest the situation. This year, in 2026, we're going to hold a national economic dialogue 1 year on. And organized labor is going to be an important part of the dialogue because it will include all the issues that we have faced together. I am a comrade and I believe in organized labor. But sometimes we have to look at practical reality. When we talk about private sector participation in distribution of energy, we're not taking anybody's jobs. We're saying that the billing and metering is better organized by the private sector. That's all we're saying. Electricity company will continue to sell their power. And so, and I say this because I've been part of the privatization of the communication sector. And I remember when I was deputy minister, we were told that communications is such a national security issue. If you privatize it, the CIA will be listening to our calls and what and what. Today, the communication sector employs more people than when we had only Ghana Telecom and Ghana Post. They were together, you remember. It was some state-owned enterprise, PNT. It was not even Ghana Telecom, it was PNT. How many people did PNT employ at that time? Today, if you take the workers of MTN and all the downstream digital employees and fintech companies and things, we are employing hundreds more people than PNT used to employ. But we're saying that ECG is not going to be privatized. And I want to insist again, ECG is not going to be privatized. There's not going to be any people who lose jobs in ECG because of private sector participation. ECG will sell the electricity to the private sector and say, we're giving you this amount of electricity, pay us. And so ECG will get its money. It will have its employees. It will pay its employees. But the private sector will be responsible for billing and metering. And so we gave you bulk electricity of this amount. ECG was sitting and waiting for you to pay us our money. So you will go to the houses and make sure the meters are working. You make sure that the people are paying the bills, and so on and so forth. So let me explain again. It's not privatization of ECG. For emphasis, it's not privatization of ECG. ECG will continue to procure. They will be responsible for the transformers. They will maintain the transformers. But they will have a bulk metering. So if you're in charge, Joshua is in charge of East Legon, we give you a bulk meter. East Legon collects the bills and repair the meters and bring ECG our money. That is what it's all about. So I'm a comrade like you. But like I said, 2025 alone, $1.5 billion in subsidies. I mean, 1.5 billion, I could improve your salaries. Why would I just throw it away because of inefficiency in the energy sector? We've done a lot to bring the energy sector around. We've negotiated with the IPPs, and the point is, it's not like in the past where VRA was our only producer. VRA is state-owned, so if we owe VRA, we can always negotiate with VRA. But today you have Sunon Asogli, you have Car Power Ship, you have all of them who are producing power and giving to ECG. And so if ECG is not able to pay them, then it becomes a debt for government, and that's what's creating the problem. And so let me take housing and sanitation. Housing is a major problem. And for households, it is consuming the income of households. We need to have a national housing dialogue and decide how, between the private sector, government, and labor, we can come together and come out with a social housing policy to make sure that we provide affordable housing for workers to purchase on mortgage or to be able to rent at a favorable cost. The reason why private house owners are taking advantage is because of the deficit in housing. And so we have the rent courts. We say don't take more than 6 months of advance, rent advance. But the one who is renting and the house owner are both not prepared to go to the rent court because they are doing it quietly. It says pay 2 years rent advance. You can go and report him at the rent court and we'll hold that landlord accountable. But the one who is being asked 2 years rent advance doesn't want to go to the court. He will go and pay the landlord because he wants a place to lay his head. And so it is because we have a housing shortfall, and that is what is making them take advantage. Countries have instituted social housing policies that have been very successful. I've seen the Kenyan example, and Kenya has built hundreds of thousands of housing units, which they either rent or sell to government employees. In the past, employees have not been able to buy houses because we fix their mortgages in dollars. And because the dollar kept sliding and was not stable, then it means that if you take a mortgage, you find that eventually you are not able to pay, and then they take the unit from you. We just pray that we're able to keep the city stable. I've said that we don't want a strong city, we want a stable city. I want to know that every year the city will depreciate by 3% or 5%, 3% or 5%, so you can plan. And it will not add too much onto your mortgage bill. So now that we've been able to stabilize the city, let's work together to maintain it, because there are many benefits that all of us will get from a stable city. And so if we're able to do that, then workers from their income can go and take a mortgage and know that they're paying a certain percentage of their mortgage. And especially if it's in a place where you're working, then you can stay, instead of paying rent to a landlord, the rent that you were paying will go towards owning your own house. And so that's something that we need to look at. Thank you, Joshua, for your support for the constitutional review process. It's going to be a very transparent process. We're soon going to announce the Constitutional Review Implementation Committee, and it is going to go through the processes for implementing the constitutional review. We believe that after being in operation for more than 30 years, our 1992 Constitution has served us very well, but we have over the years recognized the loopholes that we need to tighten. And so let us handle it together, not in a partisan manner, but knowing that that Constitution will serve us for another 30 years, into the future. And so it's something that we're happy to look at. Decentralization, we must deepen decentralization. And after I came back into office, even though the previous government had reduced the District Assembly's Common Fund from 7.5 to 5%, we have maintained it at 5%, but we have said that 80% of the money should go to the assemblies. In the past, they didn't get up to 50% of the monies. The remaining was spent at the center, at the District Assembly Common Funds, Administrator's Office. Procurements were made from there. And so we decided that every assembly needs dustbins. So we procure thousands of dustbins, and then we send, hey, here are your dustbins. Meanwhile, the assembly wants to invest their money in something else. So we're telling them that 80% of the money will be sent to you, 20% will be retained at the center for centralized spending, and the 80% you can have. And so if you go to the districts today, I mean, economic activity is much better than it used to be in the past. And I've said that every year we'll increase the share. The Constitution says between 5% and 8%. 5% is the minimum. And so over the last administration, they kept it at 5%, which was the minimum. And so we'll continue to increase it so that the share that goes to the district assemblies to decide what they want to use it for will be increased. Supervision of state-owned enterprises is changing. State-owned enterprises were run haphazardly, and it was like people's personal, income generator. Anybody who was CEO could decide what he wanted to do, travel when he wanted, to spend money the way he wanted. It's no more the case. We're holding all CEOs to account, and I've told them that the requirement that they should audit their accounts and produce annual reports every year must be adhered to. if by the deadline you don't produce your annual account and your audited accounts, it will be a basis for your reshuffle or your removal. We need to bring order into our state-owned enterprises. Recently, I had to give an instruction to stop travel by boards. I mean, we have so many hotels and venues. You can rent nicely, go and sit. If you like, come and stay in the hotel and enjoy 2 days of, some nice air conditioning and things and hold your meeting. Why would the whole board move to a foreign country to hold board meeting? Or to travel for training? Bring the trainer here and come and train the board. And so recently I had to give an order because I noticed that, the board thing was being abused. And so we've asked that they cannot travel for such purposes. And if it is essential that they have to, then they must seek permission from the Chief of Staff. We need to rein in the SOEs. And I'm saying that those that are not able to perform, we're going to list as many of them on the Security and Exchanges Commission on the Stock Exchange so that it brings accountability into their affairs, because they have to, as public listed companies, file their annual returns. But aside from that, those that are essential that were not listed on the stock exchange, we must make sure that SIGA is monitoring their activities and they are not incurring debts that governments have to pay. The final one is illegal mining. Illegal mining has eaten into the fabric of our society. And I must say that it is not only a menace to our society, but it has involved the circle of traditional rulers, political party appointees and everything. And so even when one party changes, those who were running some operation who were to one party will go to the next party and say, oh, now that you have come and take over this operation and let's share, and we too will be getting small. This is what we're doing. And so I don't kid myself that we don't have our own people involved. And the work of the NIMOS is not easy. They go to a community and the chiefs, the youth, and everybody come out and resist them. And so I didn't kid myself that we will be able to win that fight overnight. But we cannot relent. We must continue. And it doesn't help when we have crisis in the cocoa industry. The low price that was paid to cocoa farmers made some of them give up their farms for gold mining. And so we had hoped that with a stable cocoa price and farmers earning more, they'll find that keeping their cocoa farms is more important than selling it for gold mining. Unfortunately, the cocoa price has crashed, and we've tried to maintain the price higher than our neighboring countries. What we have to do is to make sure that there's no smuggling into our country, because then what it means is with our price we'll be subsidizing the Cote d'Ivoire farmers and other farmers. So we must make sure that we're not having cocoa smuggled in so that we are paying a higher price than they are paying. We're hoping that it will stabilize with the new automatic mechanism we're coming with, so that farmers know that they're getting 70% of the price. So if they take their calculator and they calculate 70% of the international commodity price and do the exchange rate in cedis, the farmer will know how much he's getting instead of a producer price being announced. But like I was saying, put more effort into the galamsey. One of the problems we have is we don't have patrol boats, especially on our waterways, to for NIMOS to continue to patrol the waterways. So in many cases you see them in local canoes. Some have outboard motors, sometimes they are paddling. I mean, Ankobra is 100 and something kilometers. If you enter a canoe, how much of Ankobra can you police? And so with the collaboration of the Finance Minister, the Ministry of Defense and Ministry of Interior Police came with some requirements that they need for patrolling the water bodies, and then equipment they need to maintain. They need tents for the forest reserves. Once they've cleared the Galamsey operators, they need to have tents where they can camp the soldiers and have kitchens where they can cook their food and all that. Imprisonments. We think that making sure that the economy remains stable is in the interest of everyone. And so there will be no kinky parties, there will be no wache parties. We'll just announce that we've come out of the IMF. But we'll still maintain fiscal and monetary discipline so that the economy remains stable and foreign direct investment increases. Foreign direct investment by 2024, I don't remember the exact figures, but they were in the hundreds of millions because of what was going on. Today they've rebounded back into the billions, almost $2 billion in foreign direct investment. And we see those investments not only in terms of foreigners coming in, but also Ghanaians earning enough money to invest. And so recently we held a meeting on local content, especially in the mining industry, and we are encouraging the mines to give more opportunity for Ghanaians to be able to earn money and create jobs. But also we're encouraging Ghanaian, big Ghanaian subcontracting mining companies to move from just subcontracting into owning mines and mining, so that the gold receipts will remain locally, and that the foreign exchange that they earn are not being transferred to develop somebody's country, but are being invested in our own country, to create more jobs for ourselves. So I want to thank my comrades for indulging us and being with us. Sometime during the year, like I said, we'll have the National Economic Dialogue. But after the preparatory work has been done by Great Wages and others, we want to have a National Labour Forum to discuss more broadly. This was a